Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio. Hello and happy Friday. I'm Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
I'm going to confess that this entire John Venn episode was really inspired by Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was remembering when she did the thing, I think it's in Dress to Kill. I'm trying to remember which special, talking about what Venn must have been like as a child and doing the father, I'm not only in the kitchen, I'm also in the hallway, like straddling rooms. And I don't know why. It's always been so charming and I love it so much. And it just popped in my head recently. And I was like, John Venn gets invoked a lot. Like Venn diagrams get talked about all the time, but we don't really know that much about him. And I had known that he had invented the bowling machine, which I'm like, this is a wonderful human who's like, I could do lots of logic and math problems. I also like to write about history and I invent cricket machines. That's a cool combination of things.
Yeah.
So I was delighted to dig into his story a little bit. I feel like as I looked at diagrams that got more and more complex, like past the syllogisms, my brain was like, no, ma'am, we have no maps for these territories. I can't do it. Even as you're reading the explainer, I cannot parse this information.
Yeah.
Like, well, there's where my limit is, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do also love the other thing that I really like about him. And the reason that I read that kind of longer piece and that other quote from his intro to the first edition of his first book is that idea of like, we can't just talk about these heady things amongst ourselves, fellow people in this field. We need to be able to communicate these concepts and share them with other people because that's really where their value lies, is in being able to share information. And I do feel like that is, I mean, at the time it was considered quite brazen on his part to basically call to account all of his fellow logicians and people that worked in mathematics and say like, yeah, but what we're doing is no good if we can't tell the average person how any of this works or why we're doing it. And I love that idea of, of someone being an educational communicator. It's just cool. I hope he wasn't secretly horrible in a way I didn't discover in my research.
That does happen sometimes.
It does. Someone will pop up and be like, yes, but did you find the thing about where he, I was about to do another Eddie Izzard and I poked a badger with a spoon, but I don't believe he ever did so. I also do really love the idea of taking on somebody's invention and trying to recreate it.
Yeah.
And especially because it seems very much in the spirit of John Venn's own work to be like, no, you guys, math is how a lot of fun things happen. Here, we will show you. This is an obvious, demonstrable way we can use math, which is just cool. It's very much in the same ideology he seemed to write about. So, math. I don't know why I keep taking on subjects I don't understand. Like, let's talk about physics. I don't really get physics. I struggle with it. I try very hard. I don't know if I'm trying to like re-educate myself as I go. But there are certainly a lot of people I admire in these fields, so it's worth kind of doing the breakdown for me. But there are times when I also am like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of subjects where like I reach a sort of ceiling on my understanding. So like I can do pretty well with things like biology and chemistry and physics up to a point.
Yeah.
And then when crossing that line, I don't understand anymore. Things I've had a big challenge trying to explain on the show before have included philosophy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, I don't understand what's happening right now. And then some of it is stuff like we've talked about. I studied literature in college. It was my entire degree. But when we get into literary forms from outside of like the English language tradition, sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I'm very lost.
Why does this structure work this way? Yeah, I understand completely what you're talking about. Yeah, but that's sort of like, I mean, to me, that's that is, for me personally, one of the great benefits of this job is that I can put myself in a position where I'm like, girl, you better learn this. Like, you got to learn it now. You got to figure this out enough that you can communicate it in a way that it hopefully makes sense of everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good, I feel like if I didn't have a job where I had to do that, I might get a little stagnant.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope not, because I am a curious person and I want to know things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know it's really easy to just be like tootling along in your life, especially in our very complex and stressful world. And be like, I don't have time for that right now.
Yeah.
And then that time never comes. So that is my hope in talking about people like John Venn, especially because he seemed to be perpetually curious and want to do new things that were maybe not what you might have expected of him. That's a little inspirational to me and hopefully other people. Keep learning new things. Keep doing new things. He was quite a mature man when he was like, I'm going to invent a pitching machine.
Yeah.
And I love it. And he seemed to find great joy in such things. So may we all continue to learn and explore new ideas and challenge ourselves and find joy in that. Fingers crossed.
We talked about the Laki Fissure eruptions.
Yes.
So you and I have each been to Iceland.
Man, I love Iceland.
Yeah, me too. I had no recollection of hearing anything about this at all ever before, including when Patrick and I were in Iceland on our honeymoon. So while I started working on this, I texted him and I was like, do you remember hearing about something called the Laki Fissure eruptions or the Skafta fires? And he said, no, I remembered hearing about Hekla, Katla, and that one that had just erupted whose name I can't pronounce. I say I can't pronounce it because I wrote it into the script the last time we had an episode that was relevant to volcanoes in Iceland. And I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced for so long. And then when I got on mic, I couldn't do it anymore. But it was the one that had the massive ash cloud that cut down on, just put air travel to a standstill for a long time. It's possible that we did hear something about this and just didn't retain it. I didn't see any signs about it in any of our photos, but Patrick and I stayed in Cloister. We stayed at the Iceland Air Hotel in Cloister.
Nice.
The way that we did our trip was that we took the ring road and we went east, and that was the part that was our easternmost point where we stopped, and then we turned around and drove back to Reykjavik to go home from there. And something I didn't know existed until working on this episode is that there is a chapel in Cloister that is dedicated to Jan Stangerson today. We did not see that. I did not know it was there. It was not a thing that I knew to look for. We did go to a really pretty waterfall that's right in that area. There's also a park that has some of the naturally occurring, I think, hexagonal basalt formations. We missed that entirely too. So it would not really surprise me if we had seen or heard something about that while we were there, but I really have no memory of it. The whole landscape of that whole region of Iceland was dramatically changed by this eruption. A lot of it became lava fields covered with that moss that covers a lot of the lava fields in Iceland, which I think is really a lichen. It is very pretty. Please don't touch it. It's very delicate. I said in my caveat about how difficult I find Icelandic to pronounce, that there's some things that I really love about the Icelandic language.
Yeah.
And one of them is that so many names for things are basically broken into parts, and each of those parts has a meaning. And so there are so many things with names in Icelandic that sound really complicated, but they end in something that means waterfall or river or any of that. So the very long full name of Cloister, which Patrick and I had been pronouncing wrong the whole time because it is spelled as though you would say it Clouster in English. means something like church, farm, cloister, or farm, church, cloister. I forget what order it is. And I love that. That was one of the things when we realized that that was the case, we would immediately be like, oh, this sign is for a waterfall. Let's go check this waterfall out. Because we didn't make a very comprehensive itinerary. We had our lodging taken care of every night. We had our travel to and from Iceland. We had a list of things that we absolutely must do. And then everything else was just explore.
Love.
Which I liked a lot.
I love everything about Iceland. My list is hot dogs.
Yeah, I missed the entirety of hot dog culture in Iceland when we were there. I did not know that was a thing.
Good. It's so good. Well, now that you say you were not so much in Reykjavik, that makes more sense to me.
Well, we spent 3 days in Reykjavik, and then we drove east.
Well, now I don't know then.
Yeah.
Because what I love about Reykjavik is that it is, other than the fact that it's completely walkable, it's not that big.
Yeah, it's real small.
So it's, I'm like, you must have walked by that famous hot dog place.
I think probably we did.
Which is kind of like a little just stand that people line up at. It's very small, but it's a freestanding little building. Yeah, I love everything about Iceland. I shout out to my friend Adam that I made when I was there because he is a listener to the show.
Okay.
And he was one of the guides on our tour. And we were part of a tour that had quite a number of people. So we were in a few different buses, and he had told me he had seen me on one of the other buses and was like, that can't be Holly Fry. What on earth would she be doing on this tour?
Oh my goodness.
Then I was on his bus after that, and we had a great time, and he was wonderful.
Yeah.
So shout out to Adam, who told me one of my favorite jokes of all time. What do you do if you're lost in the forest in Iceland?
What?
Stand up. Because there is not a lot of tall foliage.
Yeah. There is a sign, a symbol that is used on signs in Iceland that looks like sort of a little, I can't remember if it's called a fleur-de-lis, like the little loopy square that is on Mac keyboards as the Mac key.
That's not a fleur-de-lis.
I knew it was wrong as I was saying it, but I can't remember what that shape is called. Anyway, that shape basically designates there's something interesting here. And so sometimes we would just see that shape on a sign and we would go see what it was. And one time when we did this, it turned out to be a museum that was called something like the Land Reclamation Center. That turned out to be a place that was really only open for school groups, but some people who worked there showed up while we were in the parking lot, and they were like, we're normally only, the kind of place that school kids come, but we will let you in for free if you will QA the English version of our audio tour for us. And we said, sure.
Great.
And this, it was an incredibly interesting museum because it was all about how in the process of settling and establishing farms on Iceland, a lot of the tall vegetation like trees was cut down, and this had a cascading effect of the trees that were there, something that they had done in the role of ecology in Iceland, was when the lava flows come, slow that down.
Right.
So without the trees there, the lava destroyed a lot of other vegetation, led to a huge problem with erosion and dust storms. And so this is an effort to plant a type of grass that I've forgotten the name of that has an incredibly long and really tangly root system. Like once the grass is planted and established, that stabilizes the soil, and then they can start planting bigger things, including trees, to hopefully slow the flow of lava when eruptions happen, which I thought was really cool.
Love it. Love it.
We had a great time with that. I ran across something that was so interesting to me during this, but also wasn't really related exactly to the subject at hand. So I just put it here in the behind the scenes instead, which is that one of the things that was happening in Europe during all of this was a lot of really intense thunderstorms and a lot of lightning. And a lot of people who died during the aftermath of all of this in German-speaking countries were bell ringers who were in the bell tower during the thunderstorm. Because
it's a lightning rod.
Well, right, still in these places, like lightning not well understood yet, and in a lot of these places it was traditional to ring the church bells to try to deter the thunderstorms. And like this was a belief that was still pretty widespread in a lot of German-speaking areas in the late 18th century. And there was kind of a superstition that if the bell ringer got struck by lightning and killed during the thunderstorm, it was because he was not doing a good enough job.
Boy, there's a good blame the victim setup.
Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of church bells were inscribed with this inscription that was translated as, I call the living, I mourn the dead, I break lightning. I found all of this fascinating.
Yeah.
And also that it felt like a big digression in the rest of the episode.
I'm very excited to go back to Iceland.
I am too.
And just in case anyone listening is wondering, that is currently full.
Yeah, there is a wait list.
Yes, you can join the wait list, and we'll see if space opens up.
Yeah. I peek over there from time to time, and occasionally I see it that it's like 2 spaces left, and then it goes back to being sold out. So it seems like a known thing with international trips like this is that sometimes people cancel. Stuff comes up in life, circumstances change, whatever.
Weddings get scheduled.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
Yeah. So there's definitely a wait list. May or may not be space that opens up. I'm glad I randomly stumbled across this topic while just trying to figure out what to do as a Saturday classic. Because I found it really interesting, and I found so many written things to get to read. We could not read directly from Steingerson's account because translation into English is still under copyright protection, but a ton of public domain stuff written originally in English. I will close our little behind the scenes with something that William Cowper wrote on June 29th, 1783. Quote, so long in a country not subject to fogs, we have been covered with one of the thickest I remember. We never see the sun, but shorn of his beams. The trees are scarce discernible at a mile's distance. He sets with the face of a red-hot salamander and rises with the same complexion. That was written in a letter. That's a final note for our Friday behind the scenes. Whatever's happening this weekend for you, if it involves volcanoes, I hope it is not a danger to you volcano, but maybe a curiosity and study of volcano done in a safe way. There's been a number of volcanic eruptions in Iceland since we decided we were going to go there for our next trip. So hopefully I haven't just caused a major jinx situation by recording this here on July 7th, 2024.
Dang it, Tracy.
I know, right? So drop us a note if you like. We're at historypodcast at iHeartRadio.com, and we'll be back with a Saturday classic tomorrow and something brand new Monday. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.